Company. There she mentored hundreds of young women while forming partnership with the United States Girl Scouts, Girls Inc., Just for Girls, while she conducted workshops throughout Sarasota County Parks and Recreation to bring self-esteem training to neighborhoods. Afterwards, in 2010, she started a charter school to address preserving Florida's pioneer heritage with an agricultural-centered campus. Now get this. During a 10-year consultancy at the United Nations, she has guided international policy on women's rights, including access to land, rights to technology, and education. She's lobbied in Congress for the Youth Promise Act and is a prior board member of Control Growth Now, where she served as a rural advisor. She is a graduate of New College of Florida with a dual Bachelor of Science in Botany and Anthropology. She was also a graduate of Goucher College, go Gophers, with a Master of Arts degree in Organizational Management and Cultural Sustainability.
Could I have one for two of the desserts?
Her master's thesis was on Sarasota rural development and the economic importance of Sarasota's environmental systems. She operates a small farm and co-op called Swamp Castle Farm, where she mentors backyard chicken keepers and keeps 25 families supplied with farm fresh eggs. And you can go on her Facebook page and it'll take you to YouTube. There's the eggs right there. So you can go learn how to keep backyard chickens. And so, of course, what do? I watch these videos. An interesting tidbit. Do you know this, Larry? So you have to keep young chicks hydrated. But if you just leave a bowl of water out, they'll drown. And so what you have to do is you put rocks in the bowl so that the chickens can drink the water, but they don't drown. That and other very interesting tidbits on Alex's YouTube channel about backyard chickens. She grew up in Ohio and moved to Florida in 1984 and to Sarasota in 1995 to raise her family. She's an avid outdoors woman and enjoys hiking vacations with her two grown sons. Please join me in welcoming Alexandra Coe. Following her, to her left is Ruta Maria Gignari, a Sarasota County resident for the last 2 decades. She was born in Boston as the first generation of immigrant parents from Lithuania. I think that's fascinating. She earned an undergraduate degree in finance and a graduate degree in business administration, and she would begin her career at Aetna US Healthcare, developing markets in Boston and Tampa as a network development executive for over a decade. She would later change her professional focus and went on to start her own company, International Staffing Group Incorporated, which places veterans with aviation and naval experience into jobs that allow them to utilize their specialized skills. I went to her company's website. I don't understand half of the acronyms and I was in the military, so it's very highly technical stuff, very interesting. She was the founder of the Women's Interfaith Network and continues to work in Homeless to Home in Northport. Her greatest sense of accomplishment thus far has been the co-founding of the Universal Crescent Clinic, a local nonprofit which provides care to those in our community without health insurance. She currently serves on that organization's board of directors and volunteers at the clinic on Saturdays and has been married to her husband for 19 years. Join me in welcoming Ruta Gignari. Finally, we have Christian Ziegler. Christian has extensive experience in both the public and private sector, from the federal to local levels of government in Sarasota County. At the state level, Christian worked at the Florida House of Representatives. This is really fascinating if you've ever read this stuff. Drafting legislative analyses to summarize the costs and benefits of proposed legislation. No, but it's really fascinating. If you ever get confused about what's going on in the House, you can just go to their website and you click these analyses links, and it's got a very easy to digest summarization. I know someone I've written those. Very interesting. At the federal level, Christian worked for U.S. Congressman Vern Buchanan as a legislative assistant on Capitol Hill, overseeing the congressman's assignment to the Veterans Affairs Committee, Foreign Affairs, Immigration, Judiciary, Housing, and other important policy areas, and then moved back down to Sarasota to work in the district office, helping the residents of Sarasota County navigate government. Following his work in the public sector, Christian helped launch Dealers United, a startup in downtown Sarasota. His role was to oversee day-to-day operations of the company, which quickly grew to 25 employees before leaving to start his own business locally. Christian lives in the city of Sarasota with his wife Bridget, a member of the Sarasota County School Board, and his two daughters. I love this, Reagan, 4 3/4, which is important when you're 4, and Sloan, who's 2. Please join me in welcoming Christian Ziegler. All right, so here's what we're going to start with today. We are lucky that we have 3 individuals, with the exception of Alex Coe, who serves on the Sarasota County Historic Preservation Advisory Board, that have never served in advisory capacity or public service here in Sarasota County for the county. So what we're going to start off with, and we've done this before, so it's not too new, but it didn't happen last time, which is some basic questions about Sarasota County itself. So if you were doing a social studies course on Sarasota County, what do these individuals know about Sarasota County in and of itself? I will start, who wants to start? We'll start wherever you want. Start Christian at the end. So, in what year was Sarasota County formed? And you get bonus points if you can tell me the day.
Oh, that is.
He's wishing he didn't raise his hand. Volunteers should never. This is, yeah, you can take it back.
I can answer.
No, he doesn't.
1921.
1921 it is. Anybody know the day? July 1st. That's really close. July 1st, 1921. The first county Board of County Commissioners was appointed by the governor and the formation of Sarasota County. There you go.
Thank you for the help.
We're going to come down, Ruta. Get scared. So government's on an October 1 fiscal year. We are in preliminary budget cycle for fiscal year 19. What is the total proposed county budget for fiscal year 19?
Like 1.30 something billion?
That's pretty close. 1.22. It's 1,222,800 or $1,222,880,603. You know, for fiscal year 19.
I rounded up.
Right? Yeah, that's good. It's fine. It's fine.
Just making sure.
All right. Okay, Alexander, sorry. How many registered voters are there in Sarasota County?
Approximately 340,000.
You're very close. I'll take it. This is off the supervisor elections website. Saying 313,613 registered voters in Sarasota County. So we're getting in on a shot. Okay, we're gonna do one more round of three. This is tricky, so I'll do rounding. I'll start with you, Alex, but we'll take rounding because this is, and I'll explain why it's complicated. So how many park sites does Sarasota County oversee? And I'll give you, this is why we round, because they count every beach access point as a separate site. But if you go to the Park Finder on Sarasota County's website, how many parks do we have in Sarasota County?
Well, I'm only going to guess this. I would say we have 60?
138. I believe the County Parks and Recreation Department manages 138 park sites in Sarasota County. Ruta? And this is all some of it. A lot of this stuff is relevant. I went to all of your websites, and a lot of you talk about affordable housing and land use and sustainable development. So, how many future land use designations does our future land use map have?
Can I use a lifeline?
Sure. Anybody? Does anybody know this? 12? 17. 17 future land use designations on the future land use map. Okay, Christian, final one. Hope this has been good. What is the countywide millage rate?
Millage rate? It's 3.4, a little under 3.4.
3.3912. I'll take 3.4 for that. That's good. Hope you all enjoy that. Yeah, so know the county. Okay, so now we'll get down to it. If you're here at the last one, you'll see some similar questions, but most of these are actually different, but I think we will start, and I'll start with Alex, with one we asked before that I think is important. So, how would you describe the fiscal state of the county? And what, if any, specific concerns do you have about the proposed fiscal year 19 budget?
Well, I think that I've actually looked at the analysis of the budget recently, and it's kind of shocking when you look at the numbers. Like you look at, what was the budget, $1.2 billion?
Yeah.
You know, you look at what it costs to operate a county, and the amount of money is staggering. So I have been to a couple budget meetings, and one of the things that concerns me the most is that I think that we can spend less money in the budget. And that's something that I wish we would look a little bit closer at. I wish that we would have a process where we could really break down the budget and have more of an understanding where the money's going, how the money's being spent, and try to spend it a little bit better. So I have a saying that I say, you know, the government's like a teenager with too much allowance. They're always broke and they're always spending money on the wrong things. So the way you fix that is you take away some of the allowance so that they spend money more responsibly. And I think that we would all benefit if we tried to approach and analyze the budget in a way that we're spending money more efficiently.
Ruta, how about you? Fiscal state of the community? Any specific concerns about the upcoming budget?
Sure. Just so that you know, I have a finance background and I do a lot of financial analysis, and that is my background. So I have looked at the budget, and From a financial perspective, there are some things that I would look at that are of concern. One of them is safety of our community, and I was looking at the EMS and fire budgets for our firefighters. And proposed for 2019, there's actually a deduction, and if you actually look at the amount of growth we've had in our county of new developments, it actually should be a very concerning flag going up to the county commissioners that we're actually not growing our budget for services that will affect the entire county. So these are some of the things that I'm concerned about. I'm also concerned that they're cutting health and human services. I co-founded a free medical clinic in Sarasota, and the need that I've seen is from working people who are working class. They have 2 jobs, 3 jobs in many cases. They can't afford rent. And if we start cutting health and human services even more, unfortunately, we're just going to not make a benefit to our community. And so these are some of the things that were flags to me when I looked at it for the upcoming 2019 year.
Christian?
Yep. So when you look at Sarasota County as a whole, I think we're in pretty good fiscal shape right now, our government. We do have a AAA credit rating, which is great. We have our disaster fund, the standards to have about 60 days in there, we have 75. And we have about 160 million in reserves kind of scattered throughout the budget. But, you know, just in general, you know, kind of what Alex was saying is I am a fiscal conservative. I wear it on my sleeve. I was going through this process right when I announced, and I sat down with one of our county commissioners, and we're kind of going through the, you know, last year they had to go find all these cuts, and they went to one department, and, you know, they had a spreadsheet, and on the spreadsheet it basically said department name, item that's going to be cut, how much is going to be cut, and what's the impact. And this specific department, they had, you know, I'm not going to kind of call out the department, but there was the line item, and it was $3,000 out of a multi-million-dollar budget, and then the description was it will have a drastic impact on our department, right? So 3,000 out of a couple million, I don't think would be a drastic impact. And I share that because I think it's important for government every single year, just like our startup here at Dealers United, you have to revisit your budget. You have to look at everything you're doing, and are we getting the greatest, you know, ROI from every dollar? And oftentimes what happens in government is they have a set amount, let's say it's $10 million a year, and then next year they're just automatically going to throw 3 or 5% towards it. And really what happens even before that is I need to make sure I spend all my 10 million so I justify getting 10.3 or whatever it is, you know, the next year. So we have to constantly evaluate, I think, when we look at our budget, and we need to make sure everything we're doing, we're getting the greatest sense of, you know, return. And if we're not getting that return, let's take those monies and use it for something else or give it back to the taxpayers. So, thank you. Thank you, Mom.
Thank you, Mom. She should be your biggest cheerleader. Well, we'll stick down with you, Christian. So Morgan mentioned that one of our next program is going to be on the single-member district proposal in Sarasota County. And like I did at the last one, I'll briefly explain it. So right now, everyone, even though these individuals come from District 2, everyone in the county has a chance to vote on them for county commission. Under the proposed amendment to the charter, what you would have is a system where they are running for District 2, and only the individuals who live in District 2 would vote for them. So you would vote for the representative from your district only. You would not vote for those outside of your district. So, Christian, what is your position on this referendum and why?
Yeah, I've already put out my position. I'm strongly opposed to it. I think that this is an effort by some in our community to change the election rules because they keep losing every election. Sarasota County, if you look as a whole and you look at our annual survey, I think it's something like 97% of the citizens think we have a good to great quality of life. Obviously, we still have people struggling, but just in general in Sarasota County. And I think this puts it at risk because the first thing is, as a voter or a resident, if we go to a single member district, and really what that means, as Kevin was mentioning, is you go from voting for 5 county commissioners, half of them, you know, like this year or this cycle, another half in 2 years. So you have 5 county commissioners right now you can vote for. You go to only voting for 1. If you go to a single member district, that means that immediately 80% of your vote is eliminated. Immediately, 80% of your representation is eliminated. Immediately, 80% of the accountability that you have with your county commissioners is eliminated. So that's the first thing, is I think people should weigh in their government. The second thing is, What I worry about, and they use the word balkanization, and I'll tell you, my dad lives in Serbia. A lot of people don't know that about me, former Yugoslavia. And you look at these different areas that just fight for their country or their little portions of the country. And what you'll have in Sarasota County is you'll have one resident that represents, let's say, Longboat Key in downtown Sarasota, fighting against a county commissioner that represents Northport. And if Northport wants to get River Road done, what's the incentive for the individual that represents Longboat Key or downtown Sarasota to get Northport done? Because they're not accountable to those voters. So you'll have a Northport rep against a Longboat rep, you'll have a Siesta Key against the Venice, and I think that right now, all five are accountable to all the citizens in Sarasota. And I'll tell you, if I'm not in a certain area enough, I hear it from people just on the campaign. I can't even imagine what our current commissioners have to do right now. So I think it's important to stick to where we are with the complete at-large, and I'm strongly against moving to single member.
Well, I have to say I'm in total disagreement with Christian over single-member districts, and there are several reasons why. One, right now, in knocking on doors across the county, we actually have to travel from Northport to the airport. It's a tremendous amount of territory and a lot of people to actually talk to. And the biggest complaint is that I hear is, can you name your commissioner? And the majority of people have no idea. They've never seen them, they've never talked to them. They said they're out of touch with them. In Northport and South County in particular, if you talk to them, they consider themselves the redheaded stepchild, that they have no representation whatsoever. With single-member district, it makes that commissioner accountable to the voters of that district. You will know who your commissioner is. If the commissioner, in the case of, say, Commissioner Mayo in the promenade vote, you would be voted out of office right now because your constituents are furious. But because you have an 80% spread over the county, your bad governing actually would be rewarded. So in this case, the commissioners would actually be held accountable more to their district and what goes on in their district. Same case with celery fields, or if you go into Foxfire, which was a disaster and there's still toxic waste there, those people would no longer vote for Moran, but Moran can get reelected because he's spread over the entire county, and these are some of the differences. And you have better representation and no voter suppression. And the only other thing that I'm a little bit worried about too is something that our commission has just proposed for an amendment in which it's actually taking away the voice of voters and requiring for an amendment, instead of having 5% of the population having signatures for 5%, we now need 10. They're making it harder and harder for the people to have a voice, and that's why I'm for single-member districts.
Alexandra.
Well, I think we have to look at why the single-member district proposal is even before us. It's before us because people do not feel that government is accountable to them. And so when the vote is there, it's up to every individual citizen to decide how they think government can be more accountable to them. There are many offices that we vote by district, and there are many offices that we vote at large. I know a lot of people that want this initiative, want it because they think it'll end corruption. They don't like the development-funded candidates that we always get. But the bottom line is, there are people out there that know that when you invest in candidates, you support certain types of things. And I have found as a candidate that what needs to happen is people themselves, individual citizens, need to step up to the plate, and they need to contribute to candidates. $5, $10, $40, whatever it is. Because if you just do the math, if 4,000 people contributed $10 to a candidate that they believed in, that candidate would have $40,000 to run a very respectable race and not be overdoing things, but be able to get their message out. And so what's important is for people to get more and more engaged in their politics, to know who their county commissioners are, to know how their government operates. And although I like voting for all of my county commissioners, but that's because I'm a political, right? I'm involved in all this stuff. I know all of these people. And I'm not willing to surrender my ability to vote for all the county commissioners, but that's my personal thing. Now, I do support why people want it. They want to have a handle on corruption. They want to have better representation. And those two things I value very much. And I respect our right as citizens to be able to have a proposal like this on the ballot and for the voters to decide which one of those positions suits them the best.
All right. All this stuff and all these people. It is what it is, right? Ruta, we'll start with you. So District 2 covers 2 municipalities in Sarasota County, Longboat Key and the city of Sarasota. And on a frequent basis, sometimes you'll hear the issue of dual taxation come about. Is there a legitimate concern for issues regarding dual taxation in our municipalities, or is the system equitable?
Well, it depends on who you talk to. I think if you talk to the citizens and you talk to the mayors and the commissioners in each city, whether it's Northport or, like you said, Longboat Key, a lot of times what happens is people are paying for services that they're not receiving. In particular, if you look at Northport they're being double taxed in some cases here, and if you look at Northport versus Sarasota and what they're receiving, it's not equitable. And you talk to people in Venice, and the same thing within the city of Venice, they're saying that, they're paying for taxes, and then on top of it, their parks are being paid for by the city, even though county residents use it, and they are getting taxed for that. So I think there is an imbalance for the dual taxation. I think there should be some kind of more equitable way of actually having cities pay for things that other county residents are actually paying for.
Any sense of how to do that? How do you fix the imbalance?
I think we have to have a joint meeting where you sit with the municipalities and you sort of iron out a brand new budget, and you take a look at the parks, and you take a look at the funds that it takes to run these facilities. The biggest thing when I heard when I was in Venice recently was there was a gentleman that's an elected official, and he said to me, he's like, you have to understand, he's like, in many cases, we were left with parks and facilities that haven't been maintained for a very long time. And now all of a sudden the burden comes on the city to have to pay for the renovation of all this. And it's not fair to the city and the residents of Venice to pay for it when other people are coming and enjoying it. So I think we have to look at the budgets and take a look at how we can do a better balancing. I don't think it's equitable right now.
Christian, legitimate cause for concern or equitable system?
No, I think it's a mix. I don't know if you live in the city of Sarasota, but I think I'm the only one living in a city. I live in downtown Sarasota, city of Sarasota. I'm actually a block away from the line. And I'll tell you, every time I drive over that line, I realize that I was a block away from, paying less taxes, if you will, in my home. But, so I remember that every time I go to Publix. I drive right by that, and it's a great reminder when I see that sign. But, no, I mean, it's an issue. I think we need to look at this, and we need to make sure. But, with that said, before I go into the issue, is I decided to move where I moved. And I wanted to be close to downtown. There's a price to living close to downtown. I was working downtown, or my girls were going to school downtown at the time when we moved, or daycare. And so I get that there's a cost to living inside the city and having the amenities and the services there. But I also think that sometimes we run into an issue where maybe we need to look at consolidating services in some way. I don't know specifically. I think you need to sit down and look at it. But you have city police, and then you have the sheriff's office, and there's the intersection right by where I live. And anytime there's an accident, you see sometimes the city police are there, sometimes the sheriff's office is there. I think both departments are doing a great job, but I think we got to take a look at that, because it is tough as a city resident, to pay those extra taxes and the guy across the street's not paying them. So, it's something we need to look at.
Alexandra?
Well, I think Christian brings up a good point, with that. We do need to kind of revisit and look at this duplication of services. That is what I think is an issue, because we all live in the county, and then we happen to have these municipalities. And many of us know there's a history of conflict between the counties and the municipalities. So I think one of the main things that we need to do is we need to have commissioners on the board that can reach out and build better relationships with the municipalities. so that then we can sit down and we can look at the services that the county provides and the services that the municipalities provide and see where there's a duplication of services. Because personally, I'm not very fond of taxes in general. And I certainly am not fond at all of double taxation or of increasing taxation. So I think it serves all of us if we can build better relationships between the county government and the municipalities so that we can decrease people's taxes by spending less money and managing our budget better, and then really looking at, making sure that we're providing the services that are needed, for safety, like the fire department and things like that, and then really make a new commitment. I think we need maybe a new commitment to what the cities are doing and what the counties are doing, and then we would be more effective.
Thank you. So I'm going to pull it back just a bit to a partisan level. As I mentioned at the beginning, there's only one primary. Ruta will be on the Democratic ticket in November. So just between Christian and Alexander, and I'll start with you, Alexander. So what makes you better suited as a representative of the Republican Party to defeat Runa come November?
Well, the thing that makes me the better candidate is that I have been involved in this county for over 20 years. And if you really look at what the county commission does, if you look at the typical agenda of the county commission, it usually says rezone, 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 rezone. So a lot of what the county commission is doing is making decisions about development. And I have been involved in development issues in Sarasota County for over 15 years. I served on the Board of Control Growth Now as the rural and East County expert. I have studied extensively the cattle ranching community and rural people of Sarasota County. And so I understand the impacts of development on our East County people. And I think that that experience is going to help me make better decisions for Sarasota County, because you really need to know what it says in the 2050 plan and understand how that came into development and what the vision has been that the people have held for Sarasota County. And those are the things that I have 15 years experience with.
Christian, how about you? Republicans have to make a choice for a candidate to head on to November. Why you?
Pretty easy question. I wear it on my sleeve. I'm a staunch conservative. I've been involved with the Republican Party. I think most people in this room know that, for over 10 years here locally. I am the elected state committee man countywide. I was elected by the voters to represent them within the Republican Party at the state level. I'm a staunch fiscal, social conservative. I wear that on my sleeve here as well. And I've been here and debated individuals in front of Tiger Bay to defend conservative principles. And I have the relationships that you need in government, because a big part of this job is really a couple things. It's number one, understanding the county issues. It's number two, having those relationships. And I'll tell you, from my campaign, I have, if you look at my endorsements, I have Governor Rick Scott has endorsed my campaign. I'll tell you, the governor, if anyone knows, he rarely, if ever, endorses candidates around the state. I have a great relationship with him. He's endorsed my campaign. U.S. Congressman Vern Buchanan's endorsed my campaign. State Representatives Joe Gruters, Jim Boyd have endorsed my campaign. The current county commissioner sitting in that seat that I am running for, Paul Caragiulo, has endorsed my campaign. These are all Republicans, but I'll tell you across the board, these individuals that are Republicans, if we're asking solely about the primary, is every Republican in this county I have helped for over 10 years get elected. I have relationships with them that we need to deliver. But it's not just relationships. I also have a background working for Congressman Buchanan. My job in his local office when I came down here was to serve the constituents in Sarasota County. They had an issue with government, they would come to me and I would help them navigate the federal government. And it's fine with the county commission, debates and in the news and the headlines, everyone wants to talk about developers and go after developers and talk about growth. But one thing that doesn't get talked about, which I think Mike and Paul and Al and Nancy and Charles, they'll all agree, is one big part of the job is serving as a customer service rep. And you have to serve citizens that have issues with their homes, their life, their community. They come to you to have their issues resolved. And I not only did it for Congressman Buchanan, but even within the party, I have background, being the grassroots guy. I care about the people. I like the people to be empowered. I've even gone after Republicans in the past, Republican elected officials, on behalf of the grassroots and the people. So that's a passion for me in business. That's how we grew our business as well. So when you look at it across the board, I think my principles and my background, clear choice in the Republican primary.
And I'll flip it.
Thank you.
I'll flip it to you. The last just partisan piece is to Ruta, I think, and someone can probably give me the data. You know, it's been quite some time since a Democrat was elected to the Sarasota County Board of Commissioners. So why are you the one to break the streak?
Well, I think the reason I'll break the streak is I honestly don't see a commissioner race being a bipartisan position. We share the same roads, we share the same streets. We're worried if red tide doesn't allow us to go out and walk on our beaches. We're upset when Okeechobee now is turning into a sludge park and it's endangering all of us. I think my strength is having worked with people across the board my entire life, regardless of backgrounds, regardless of religions, cultures, everything. I've been able to sit down and actually, as a business person, sit down and work things out. My other strength, I think, is I actually, because of my work in the community, I think I understand Sarasota and I understand its needs, and I'm willing to listen and learn from people and actually come up with solutions to help this community. I did so with the clinic, and I'm hoping to do this now with this Homeless to Home program. And I think you need someone who's connected to this community. I know Christian mentioned he has a lot of great endorsements. Well, I'm not chasing the White House. I'm not chasing Tallahassee. I'm chasing the people in this county to make sure that everyone here has a voice. Because currently, the way it is now, our voices are not being heard. If you take a look at what's going on, our elected officials are answering to an elite group. And most of them have special interests, whether it's development or else. The people are not being heard. We had the case of celery fields, we had the case of Siesta Promenade, where the citizens had to rally by the hundreds in front of the commissioners. Shame on the commissioners for having to put citizens into this position to have to defend themselves and what they believed in. And even then, it was fairly dismissive. It's wrong. Our commissioners work for us. We are hired by you, and we have to represent all of you, and that's why I think I'm the better candidate.
We'll do one more issue-based thing and then we'll throw it to the crowd. But so, speaking of citizens pitted against each other, and maybe something that could be in the future for single-member districts when you have people going, let's look at, Lido Beach falls within District 2. Siesta Key falls in District 4. So what's your position on the city's plan to renourish Lido Beach with sand being dredged from Big Pass, given the citizen opposition on either side, depending on where you fall? Christian, we'll start with you.
Yeah, this is a very tough issue, and it's something that I've recently started diving into. To be honest, I don't have an answer for you. When you look at this, so I met with Michael Holderness, and Michael Holderness is a guy on Siesta Key supporting my campaign, but he's also kind of championing this issue for Siesta Key and the concerns they have. And this is a clear example of why local government's amazing. I'll tell you, I've worked at the federal level, I've worked at the state level. When you get local, you really get these individuals that are passionate about their community, passionate about their neighborhoods, and they want to make sure that you understand. So I spent a couple hours with Michael. I went out to Siesta, we had lunch, we talked, and then we went and toured North Siesta and the risk that Siesta Key Beach could be put under. But then you also have the fact that Lido Key residents are seeing their beach erode, and what do you do for Lido? And do you dredge from there in between Siesta and Lido, or do you take it out, from out in the ocean or the Gulf, or do you take it from New Pass? And this is something that I have yet to meet with the residents on Lido. I plan to, and the city, to really figure out what's going on. I don't know how much of a role the county commission can have with it, but that's another example where, let's say you had that district, which is District 2, and the District 4 representative right there, and those two individuals were concerned with an issue. Well, guess what? They're in the minority. And there are 3 other commissioners. Does the commissioner in Northport, if you went to a single-member district system, would that commissioner in Northport really care about dredging and how that's going to impact Siesta Key residents? Probably not, because they're going to want all that money that's going to be used for dredging used for River Road, right? Or other projects down there. So I think that's a big issue that we need to look at. I'll tell you, the Siesta Key thing is a very tough issue. We can't let Siesta Key be at risk. That's our biggest draw to our area. Whenever I talk to my friends, I say, hey, you got to come down to visit. I'd love to see you. They kind of want to see me, but then when I say, hey, we get the #1 beach in the country, you want to come down? Boom, they're on a flight down. So, that is our draw. That brings our tourists here. It's an unbelievable natural resource. I want to do everything we can to protect it. But then you also have to look at the residents of Lido and how can we deliver for them as well. So, it is a tough issue, though.
It is. That's why I ask these questions. Alexandra?
I am very interested in this situation. I have been a boater for over 25 years here in Sarasota County, and I have watched the changes in our bay. So I have met with the city, and I have also been asked to look into this issue further through the Lido Beach Association. And my proposal, and I'm actually working on this right now, is that if we just continue to dredge, I was on a homeowners association for Barrier Island in Charlotte County. If we just continue to dredge, it's a temporary fix. So what I have proposed is that I think we need to look at the overall navigation issues in Sarasota Bay and see how we fix the navigation issues. And then my hope is that if we look at that first, we might be presented with an option that will solve the eroding beach issue. Because without getting into detail, when the bay is filling in, it makes the water flow faster through the passes. And so what's happening is you're getting a stronger flow of water because it's being pushed into a tighter space, and that's causing the sand to move. So we need to look at these things more holistically. I have a very strong environmental background. That was a focus of my undergraduate work at New College. And so that's another thing that I can bring to the county commission, is looking at environmental systems in new and holistic ways to solve issues like we have with the sands on Siesta and Lido.
Ruta?
Well, I'm not in favor of dredging the pass, and the reason being is it had been dredged in the past, and we actually did bring sands to Lido, and the problem is, the issue is Lido is still eroding. I also am very pro-environment. I think we need to take a look at what we're doing to Sarasota County. Overall, we have rising sea levels, we do. We also have a lot of pollution going in, and other things and other factors that are actually adding to the issue at hand of the erosion of our beaches. I would be in favor of getting some experts in to take a look at how best to handle Lido Beach and its erosion. Our economy is driven by our environment in Sarasota County. We have beautiful beaches, we have Mayaca. In South County, we have more mineral springs. We have a lot of natural beauty. We need to protect those. So I'm not for the dredging. I think we just need to do some studies and find a viable solution that's going to be more long-term and better for the environment.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to throw it to the audience. We will start with our microphones. Please state your name and that you are a Tiger Bay member. No soliloquies. Let's get to the questions.
Okay, Merv Kennel with the firefighters. I am a Tiger Bay member. And the long and short of it is, for nearly 20 years, there's been no increase in taxes other than monies come in through growth. And the concern I have is that from Fire and Emergency Services, we have maxed out, and we've been fortunate enough to survive off of the excesses that were banked before the collapse. But that money is running out. We're spending $2 million a year more than we're bringing in. And so we got about 2 years left before that's gone at today's costs. With the increased call loads and needs for expanded staffing, everybody said I don't want new taxes, and I don't either as a retired firefighter. But at the end of the day, I want to save community, and I want to know where you guys stand on doing what you would need to do in order to continue to provide the kind of service that our citizens have come to expect.
Who wants to field that first?
I'll take it.
Everyone loves firefighters. So go.
Well, I think I mentioned it in part of my opening when I was looking at the budget. I also was alarmed to see, like I mentioned, that there was no increase for our fire and EMS. I'm also concerned about our infrastructure in regards to fire and EMS. When we have roads that are one-way, or we have roads that are just two-lane, and all the development that's coming, and we don't have the infrastructure for our EMS to even make it through a road, God forbid if there was a tragedy occurring. I will make it a priority, as I think all of us should make it a priority, to make sure that our fire and EMS have access to funds that they need to make sure all of our citizens are safe. I don't want a response time if somebody I know is having a heart attack of being 45 minutes versus 15 minutes because there's a lack of funding. And I think all of us agree our safety comes first, and our job as a commissioner, that our citizens' safety is number one. So I would make sure that I would work within the budget to increase it, and whatever it takes.
Alexander, go ahead.
Well, as a constitutional conservative, I believe very strongly in the three main roles of government: to protect our property rights, to establish policy for a thriving economy, and to support our safety and well-being. So the firefighters, and full support of them, would come under the duty of safety and well-being. I think maybe this might go back to the earlier question about city and county relationships, because there's no city firefighters. It's all the county that is out there. So maybe we need to revisit the relationships between the municipalities and the county and see if there's some ways that we can shift the budget to make sure that our firefighters are fully equipped, that they have enough employees, whatever it is that they need, because to provide for our safety is the duty of government, and that needs to be a priority.
Yeah, so I think everyone here supports the firefighters, and we need to, make sure that our community's safe. That's something that I'm running on, and, I have a great, not just the firefighters, but with the sheriff's office, we need to make sure he has the resources as well to keep us safe. So I understand the concerns. I'll tell you, we need to make sure that they have the resources necessary to keep us safe, and how you pay for that is, I think last year they went back to the county commission, went back to their staff and tasked them with finding $5 million to cut, and they came back. And I would like to see that, not just in a time when you have a crunch or a time crunch or an issue pop up. I would like to see every year, how can we cut more money? Let's maybe go to 10 million. Let's see how we can cut 10 million. What can we cut where we can still provide services to citizens that they expect and deserve? We have a lot of citizens in this town that use the libraries, for example. They love their libraries. We need to make sure the libraries are funded and do what we can for them. Or sheriff's office, or firefighters, just across the board. And if we find these cuts on programs that we really just don't need, I think it's a healthy exercise to do every single year. And now we can reallocate that money towards something else. So we need to make sure they have the resources. And I don't think we need to raise taxes. Against that, I think government has enough. We just need to continually review, how are we spending our money? How are we getting the greatest ROI from every dollar taken from the taxpayer? Because it's really taken from the taxpayers. It doesn't just grow on trees. Government just doesn't generate its own revenue. It comes directly from the people that we represent. All of you pay taxes, and it goes into our pot. It's really the biggest investment, and that's why I tell people as well, local government is so important is, look, you guys have money taken out of your paycheck. A lot of you put it in, the stock market every day. You might even have it on your phone. You might check 4 times a day. How are my stocks doing? Well, you should be doing the same thing with your local government. How's my local government doing? Because it probably is, as a whole, the greatest investment that citizens are making is into their local government. As much money comes out of your paycheck towards the local government, you need to keep an eye on it. But so support the firefighters. They need to have the resources they need, paying for it. Let's find ways to cut.
Still Hoban.
Thank you very much. Is this on? Yes. Christian has has stressed about a return on investment. And so my question's about that. Every county commission election, the development interests anoint, heavily fund, bankroll a candidate for county commission to election. They spend tens of thousands, they get millions in return by weakening policies that protect the environment, neighborhoods, the taxpayers, about growth paying its own way, and other important interests, traffic, big one. So my question to you is, I won't say who the developer's candidate here is in this election, but he knows who he is. So my question to you, is let's get it out in the open here about growth management. do you think the county is doing enough today to control growth, allow it, but control it to protect the taxpayers, the environment, the neighborhoods, and mobility? And if not, what would you do to control it more? Or do you think it should be controlled less? Or do you think it's perfect today? And please be specific about what changes in policy, if any, you would make. That's my question.
I'm going to go ahead and lead off with this. And Dan, I really do appreciate your question. I kind of suspected it was coming, just being a Tiger Bay one time. Anyone could. But I also want to be clear to people here too, as well. Between Dan and I, there's only one of us that makes money on development, and it is not me. So I want to be clear that everyone knows that before I start. The second thing is when this process started, and then I'll get to your question, it was an interesting way this rolled out. Is number one, I will tell you, I was not the developer's candidate in this race. The reason why I ran for this race is Paul Caragiullo, the current county commissioner. He called me about a year ago, and Paul said, Christian, look, I am running for re-election unless I can recruit you to run for my seat. I said, what? County commission wasn't even on my radar. What are you talking about? I wasn't planning on running for office. This isn't something that I've gone like a lot of candidates and I go to the planning commission, I work my way up, or maybe I start city commission, county planning commission, then you go to the county commission. This totally came from Paul reaching out to me, and the reason why he reached out to me was he's like, look, you have a young family. You guys know the struggles of other families in this county, and you see this community through a unique perspective, and I know you truly care about this community and you work hard. That's what got me into this race. I was not in line to run for county commission, which happens sometimes. So that's the first thing. The second thing is once I got in this race, I said, you know what, I'm gonna go meet with Dan Loback. Because Dan's usually on the other side of people that are pro-business or a lot of conservatives that run for office, and I said, I'm gonna go meet with Dan Loback. Then I go online and Dan Loback's already attacking me and accusing me of things that are just so totally false. On how I was recruited to run, that the developers picked me to run, totally false, because again, I told you how I came into this race. So then I, kind of stepped back and I said, no, I'm gonna reach out and we're gonna meet. So I met with Dan and we had a good conversation for about an hour. It was a great conversation. And I walk out of there and Dan starts attacking me again. And so this is how it works. I just share this with everyone, how it works kind of behind the scenes. But when you start talking about growth, I'm a grassroots candidate. You look at my donors, a lot of these individuals are people that I've served along, Cynthia Crow back here, that I've served along for over 10 years with the grassroots, helping to enact conservative principles up and down the ballot in Washington, Tallahassee, in Sarasota. That's what my campaign is based on. And if you want to, I got one candidates are attacking me for, being a political guy and being so involved, because I am passionate about the grassroots. I'm passionate about giving people a voice. And that's where I look at this from. This isn't from, I'm some shill or something like that, Dan was kind of alluding to over here. And so when you start talking about growth is an important thing because we have a lot of citizens that are affected. We have to manage the fact that people want to move here. We want people to move here. We want businesses. I know Kevin, I know Mark Huey, I think I saw him in the room. They work every day to get more people to move to Sarasota County. Because the more people we have here, the more vibrant of an economy we have, and the more jobs are available for citizens to get locally, which is very important. However, we also have current citizens that live here, and I get frustrated just like everyone else when it's high season and we have traffic and it's tough to get between places. So that's something as a county commissioner you have to juggle. And you really have to look at it project by, Dan, thanks, you asked your question.
Well, you already answered
have to
it.
look at it project by project on every single project on is it a valid project or is it not. So that's my job as a county commissioner. And sometimes you're going to vote with those individuals that Dan pointed out, and other times you're going to vote against them, and it's going to come down project by project basis.
Just on the topic of growth, I know that was directed to Christian, but Rudy or Alexander, any thoughts on is the county doing enough to manage growth? If not, what could we be doing better?
Well, there's a couple things in regards to Mr. Lobeck's question of Christian. If you go in the finance reports and you take a look at who the donors are to Christian Ziegler, go online, they're public knowledge. There are a lot of LLCs that belong to certain developers of the county. It's not hidden, it's there. So to say you're a grassroots candidate...
They like to back winners.
Well, I have to... Well, or people who are going to vote...
They're buying into my message.
They are buying, or
they're buying into my platform.
And you're also buying into having to vote for them to get rezoning. Well, there's a give and take for both. And it's my turn. You've actually spoken, so let me speak, please. As far as growth is concerned... the return on investment, it should be to the citizens. It shouldn't be to the developers. I'm not anti-development. Developers can make their money. They have that right. But you have to have sustainable growth. You have to have proper infrastructure. You have to have impact fees that will cover and do the return of investment, because as a citizen, I am not getting my return on investment when someone out east is making a huge development. We're not seeing that. Our tax dollars are actually going into helping him fund for that development. So there is no ROI on that. And as far as growth for Sarasota County, we have to make sure that it is done in our favor, that our impact fees are covered by new construction, by the people who are buying those homes. We've paid our taxes, we paid our dues, and every single time new developments come up, they're using the same cookie cutter strategy of building where 8 to 10 years from now, we're actually losing money and we're actually having to subsidize those. So again, please take a look at the report, see who your commissioners are answering truly to. It's not us, and the return on investment are in their favor, not ours.
Alexander?
Well, I like to start by saying that traffic, in and by itself, is an indicator of poorly managed development. So, since we all know that we have traffic issues, we can definitely do better. All right, I said earlier that as a constitutional conservative, I believe that one of the roles of government is to protect our property rights. The property rights of a developer are not more important than the property rights of the people that live in those neighborhoods. And many times, people in this community have felt like the commission has voted in favor of development over their interests. And many times they have. And I've spoken with many people whose properties are being flooded by nearby development, and we all know there's tons of issues that have to do with this particular thing. So one of the things that I think we have to do that we're not doing is we have to ask ourselves this very important question. What happens when all the development stops? What happens when all the development stops? When we get to this 2050, this mythical place, when Sarasota County is built out, what happens then? Where is the economy? Because right now, we have an economy that's based on growth and development. One day, that economy will stop. And so we need to ask ourselves that question right now. And we need to be making decisions, building an economy that is not based on growth and development, building an economy that supports the small businesses that are already here, building an economy that is sustainable in Sarasota County without development, and then let development be that part that grows our county to a place where we want to be. And I think that that's one of the most critical things, is to say to ourselves, what happens when the growth stops?
Gotcha. Before we get to the last question, I want to throw it to Christian real quick, because there was something we talked about at the last meeting, and I think Ruta just brought it up, and I think it's a fair thing for a moment, a brief moment, but follow the money, right? The issue is always follow the money. And the assertion is, hey, a lot of money coming in from certain individuals, look at the finance reports. Just quick, briefly, to the point that Ruta made about the money.
Yeah, I mean, look, I got in this race. I had the endorsement of Paul Caragiulo. I've got endorsements from other individuals, my background in the community. Everyone knows where I stand on issues. I mean, I don't know if there's a more documented individual on issues that's ever run for county commission than I. On ABC 7 once a week. I've been in the papers for 10 years. People are pretty, you know where I'm at with my principles. Now, I am raising a bunch of money, and to be honest, I'm proud of that money, because let me tell you how this works. People donate because they care about the community. They want to shape this community. You look at my donors, I have everything from, yes, I do have business people that are donating in my community because they think I'd be good for business. I also have grassroots people that are donating to my campaign because I've delivered for them for over 10 years now. I've been their voice against government. Let me tell you, locally, we had years ago, probably 10 years ago, we had county commissioners that they had term limits, 8 years, but one of the commissioners was trying to bypass that a little bit. I helped lead that fight against that effort. And I represent the people. I love our grassroots. If anyone's involved with the party, they know I'm always the one representing the people. So you look at my contributions, I do have a lot of money that I've raised from individuals and business, but I also have a lot of money from individuals. There are a lot of $20.18 donations that I've got from a ton of people, grassroots leaders, community leaders, citizens, and across the board. So I have a wide spectrum of donations, and I'm sure my opponents are going to pick, a couple and go after, and that's fine, that's fair. But when you have so many donations, it's really tough to avoid that attack.
Throw it out to the audience.
My name is Dick Cooley. I am a longtime Tiger Bay member and a longtime resident of Sarasota. One of the crown jewels of Sarasota is Siesta Beach. I think we all can agree on that. The problem with Siesta Beach is that unless you get there before 10 o'clock, you're not going to get a parking spot. Can we get, all three candidates, can we get your opinion on charging for parking at Siesta Beach? Not only use the funds for maintaining the beach and the infrastructure, but so that we as residents can hopefully get to use the beach, because you're not going to use it if you get there after 10.
All right, paid parking.
I'll go first.
Go for it.
So that's something I am totally open to looking at paid parking on Siesta Key. But I want to see kind of three things happen. Is number one, I would like to make sure Sarasota County residents are not charged. I don't think we should be charged to park at Siesta Key Beach. We get enough residents that come here that take advantage of it. And so I want to find a way that our residents don't get charged. Now, some people are saying they go get a decal. I would prefer if there's some way to automate it. I mean, you have privacy concerns, but it'd be nice to tap into the vehicle registration or something. I don't know what's possible until I look in it, but I would like our citizens to be able to park without getting petitioned or have to petition the government to park. That's the first thing. The second thing is I would like to make it easy on our customers. In this scenario, our customers are people visiting. It'd be nice to make this app-based. I'm a technology guy. I like to look at technology to solve solutions. That's what I've done in my career. I would like to find a way that it's app-based, so if they're out there, and it's hard. When my wife and I go to the beach, we get two young girls to drag all this stuff out there. You get set up, and then you look at the time, and you're like, oh, my meter's almost done, but I want to stay for sunset another 45 minutes or whatever. I want to make it easy that they can just get on their phone and boom, throw some coins in the meter electronically. And then the third thing is, I want to see that money stay on Siesta Key. You have residents of Siesta Key that are out there. We're very fortunate to have that draw with their tourists, and it's a big amenity for all of us in the county. But they do have to deal with the traffic, they have to deal with the crowds and congestion, and I think the least we can do is make sure those dollars are earmarked for Siesta Key to really, towards the beach, towards the other facilities there to help that. So those are the three things I'd like to see, and then I'm open to considering parking as long as our residents are paying for it.
Britta?
As far as parking is concerned on Siesta, we need a solution, we really do. Whether it's, I think we need off-site, obviously, parking or parking garages, something that can accommodate many more people than we can currently. I'm not opposed to charging non-residents of Sarasota County. I think Sarasota County residents should never be charged for beach access. We should have that go to every single citizen of the county, and that should not be a fee. For people that are visiting, I'm not opposed to having a few dollars and having them pay for their parking to add to our beaches, to clean them up, because as many of you know, after 4th of July or Labor Day, our beaches are trashed. And then we, the citizens, actually, even though we're paying taxes, go and volunteer by the hundreds to go clean up our beaches because we want to live here and take our kids to a clean beach. So I think we need a resolution, and we do. I think if we have some financial responsibility for visitors paying for parking, perhaps at least it will pay for cleanup. But I am opposed to having any citizen of the county pay for it.
Alexander?
Well, I think it's a shame that we spent all that money that we spent on renovating Siesta Key Beach and we have this parking issue. I think that was kind of short-sighted. We should have been looking at other modes of transportation to get people to the beach when we did the most recent renovation. So I agree with everyone else. I don't think that we should have to pay. And if the tourists were going to pay, they may not be happy about that, but I think if the money is earmarked for like estuary preservation or for specific things that help the environment, that even us as citizens, we may not mind going to the beach and paying. But I think there has to be alternatives. Like we could run a trolley from Southgate Mall. We could look at the Promenade project that's on the corner of Sticker Point and 41 and think about that being a place where you park and you get on a trolley and you go to the beach. So I think we have to look at this again in a more holistic way and try to figure out, what is causing the parking problem? And then how do we resolve that? Because we certainly don't want more parking on Siesta Beach, because I think it's too much parking already. So we need to have some kind of alternative ways that we can get people to and from the beach.
All right, we will do one more question, and I'll be brief, hopefully up here, or we'll be talking to an empty room.
Sean Freed, Tiger Bay member. I would like
He's not?
to.
You're not a member?
Are you a Tiger member or no?
You're not allowed to speak then?
Oh, I'm not?
No.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
All right. That was the easiest question we got all day. All right, hey, please join me in thanking the candidates for coming up here today. Big round of applause for Alexander Coe, Rudy Gignari, and Christian Ziegler. There is a primary election on August 28th. Get out and vote. General election November 6th. And don't forget, August 16th, program here on single member districts in the county. Thanks y'all for coming.